But
Well, there you go, you've answered that question.
question.
You won't get it much better than a really good micro
right, there you go. That's what, I've never heard that.
grasses we have in Australia.
Yeah.
Then what do you want?
Yeah,
to
and I
put something
don't
else
want to
in
make the
it?
mistake of, while I'm seeding the others, do that and then regret that. I've never had anyone say
Because
that.
you do have some options with it. Microlina seed's worth at least $70 to maybe $100 a kilo. You can harvest seed off.
Yeah,
You'll make more money doing that than grazing it.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can still graze it.
yeah, yes. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Simple, some of them are just as simple to harvest.
This natural landscape had huge numbers of them, and they actually occur just even on your lawn. If you're mowing your lawn, you see this little row of mulch, a little pond behind it, and it trickles around the end, and then it might fill the ends, and then it'll fill the middle. And so this process is everywhere in the landscape. And of course, either it's a drain or it's a flame and contour. And we need to get all these things sorted, but the real issue is, if you're doing anything with water, you have to manage plants to take over from what you've decided to do, because water is the most destructive unit, and so is the sun when they're separate, once we get them working together with the plants. And so it's the thing I mentioned, that this old land has the most brilliant patterns of how to do that, how to use it, and the results that can be achieved almost automatically. Colin and I have had a bit of a roundup on this for a number of years. We were talking here earlier on in the day. We really need a lot of you people to just examine very carefully that this is available, and that there are hundreds of demonstration sites right across the country today, and that in fact it is, in an economic sense, massive for this next generation. It was mentioned to me very early that
Yeah, well,
carefully brought it back.
yeah, that's right.
Biggest and single issue, Lotsky, scientists that went through, and we are a very stupid lot, because he explained that there was these series of ponds, which you call your bathtubs, all across the landscape. To his knowledge, not known in any other country. And of course, within that system, there's a whole complexity of how fertility was managed, how, plants progression was organised. But when you put a contour in, you must remember, and I'm talking contour, so that every time it rains, the water in that contour sits into the ground, and it sets the groundwater movement. So it allows you then to predict your allelopathic compounds from which species of plants to put in. It's just the most brilliant old landscape, but we have been using the pieces of it because we were told to.
Yeah, it's virtually naturalized here.
Yeah, because anything that goes dormant, to be able to grow a plant in the winter, like people try all the time, and I try to do it organically and plant into a whole heap of weeds, and your results will be fairly ordinary, if not a failure. So we need to do something about that. And if plants go into a dormancy, a winter dormancy, it gives you a niche to plant things into. So what I did was just plant oats, wheat or barley, any of those winter things, or multi-species crops now into those plants when they're dormant in the winter.
So you could use a winter.
Yes, you can do. Yeah, lucerne can compete a bit with it, but if it slows down.
If you have the totally winter dormant, the old-fashioned lucerne that didn't operate in winter at all.
Yeah. Hunter River, old Hunter River.
Yeah, then that might work too.
They've got heaps of winter species introduced and well, mostly introduced. And they don't have any summer grasses anymore. Any native ones, they've lost them all. So reverse it around and sow a summer feed crop. And because all these winter ones now, they go into summer dormancy. That's the best fit, because then you're filling a feed gap. If you've got no feed in the summer, wherever you've got no feed, there's probably a niche that you can put something
Young
in.
people do Jack Millet here, so
That's
that
right.
would probably work. We
And
don't
you-
do sorghum, but we do Jack Millet.
And you may not need to, and shouldn't need to kill any of these winter species if they've shut down for the summer, gone to sleep, or just.
The only thing
shut
that
down.
might compete is the paspal.
Yeah, that's the easier way. Like, if you've got plenty of winter ones,
Mm.
you probably don't, you may not need winter feed, but you might need summer feed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the better way,
Okay.
turned around the other
Well,
way.
the standards, because you're not using a standard, 2 foot, 60 centimetres between drills?
I'd use foot spacings. 2 feet sort of, well, you can do it, there's some people that have done it that way, just to get something else into a pasture. The only limit, there's a couple of things. With a tine, the limit with zero tilling is that the tines will block up if they're too close, and there's too much ground disturbance.
Yeah.
So going wider can be an advantage. I've gone foot spacings, and now because the grasslands are that thick and dense now, I've just recently got a discs just so I can get through everything, and that's fine. But the trouble with them is they're very expensive to go that way, whereas the time's relatively cost effective.
And high maintenance.
Well, discs are high maintenance, yeah.
And I want a disc will go through. It'll smear the edge of the cut, and the roots will just run along that cut, and they won't go back out into the soil. Whereas if you're using a tine, if you've got rubbishy soil, you're better off to use a tine than you are a disc.
Yeah, poor structured soils, time far better than disc.
Do you still see a role for the yeoman's plough?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was,
What, just do a broadcast and whack the
It's
cows
what you
on
do
it?
after it.
What?
It's
Yeah.
what you do after it that's important.
Okay, well tell me what I do after.
So if you go down and you rip, you've got to put in something that's going to grow down into
Those holes, yeah.
into those holes and start to build structure and exudate down there and if you can put, I've always found if you can put something behind the tine, drip down some worm juice, compost tea, any of those things, they start that process down deeper. And what we're trying to do is build the bucket and start it down deeper. So yeah, if you're going to do it, it's
I
that
had
and then what
success
you do
with
after.
tillage radish
Yeah,
where I've done the deep rip.
yeah.
Village radish, perfect.
So down where I am, high mag soil. Once you start, you can't stop.
I know, well we're of course the other end of the
With
scale.
electric fencing back from dams and made our stock walk through the grazed area to the dam and back. Now we got some funding to put a water system around our farm, so we've got a ring main and a bore, and we have portable troughs for the most part.
Well,
Mike,
they,
can you describe the portable troughs a bit more?
they cup and saucer or what are they?
Yeah.
No, they're portable. So they're we actually just have the big
Oh,
round plastic, how many litres are they, Brad?
I don't know, they're 18 kilos empty.
Yeah, so they're just,
So
about
you
that,
just
they
take
get
them
from the
back
local
and
rural supply store. They are attached to a length of poly pipe, and we've got a fitting at a riser. And we just,
High flow valves.
yeah, and I can move them myself on the back and side by side. The sheep ones are just, so they're the cattle ones, and then the sheep ones are just the little low ones.
Yeah, we've been testing, it's a bit like you actually, I do soil tests, but not to put fertiliser on, not interested in that. Mostly if you, doing soil tests, if you don't want to put fertiliser on, what are you testing for? But I'm doing it to monitor. So I've got a pretty good idea what's happened. And our soils, our soil chemistry, all of them, and I put a slide quickly up there, have increased by an average of 160%. Phosphorus has increased by 300. Everything has, interestingly, except for sodium, iron and aluminium, they've gone the other way. So if we get it right, soils will balance themselves. And that's all I'm really monitoring. So, but it's been monitored fairly carefully over the years. I repeat it, as we do soil carbon, because we might be monitoring that for a long time as well, just to see what's actually happening. Not to put fertilisers on or anything like that, but to find out what's going on.
So I suppose this is the chemicals and this is the biological.
Kept a real close eye on biology, and they've all increased enormously. off the top of my head. Mycorrhiza fungus increased by about 600 or 700%. Protozoas increased by about 1,000 times. You know, it's huge. People worry about that because protozoa are a problem, but they're a positive thing, really. Bacteria have gone a little, they haven't increased as much, but by 300, so everything's sort of balancing there too. I mean, Mother Nature's pretty clever. It'll balance itself if we give it half a chance. Just basically get out of the way and let her fix it.
Any of the traits they're naturally doing it, like copper and sulphur and those sorts of things?
Yeah, they have. So I don't think we really necessarily need to put anything on, but I mean, in saying it, you've got to be careful about how you say that, because someone will go home tomorrow and not put any fertiliser on and the wheels will fall off. So that's why I talk about transitioning. You know, if you want to get your farm functioning, at the top we're talking about just whatever fertiliser you're putting on, just gradually reduce it over time, or do some trials are the best thing to do. Whatever you want to try, do a strip up the paddock and see if it works.
The thing too, if you're at the start of the process and your plant's not healthy, you're going to have to give it something to make it healthy, so it photosynthesises better, exudates better, feeds the biology better. So, and then as your soil gets better, that gets less and less and less and less.
Yeah, that's exactly right. To fix it, I've been rambling on about growing plants all day, but we need to go big, healthy ones.
Yeah.
So don't pull the fertiliser out too quick, otherwise you only have little tiny ones and you won't get the results. So weed off gradually.
Okay, we know the nitrogen comes out of the sky, so there's certain things come out of snow and thunderstorms and what have you. So where's it coming from?
Well, we've been told either bullshit for the last 100 years.
Yeah, and we don't have to listen to
Totally wrong.
No, I know, but it's an argument that a lot of starter farmers and the local produce.
Yeah, I just said that all the nutrients at home increased by 162%. There's a couple of different ways that's happening. One of them, we're growing bigger plants now. So those plants are drawing nutrients up from depth. And so cycling nutrients. So that's the first obvious thing that's happening. Now, to start with, this plant of ours, 4.5 billion years ago, was just a bloody big ball of rock. That's all it was. All the minerals, nutrients, everything, elements, everything we did was on this planet right from day one. They haven't gone anywhere. They're still here. So we just need to cycle them. And one thing that, to this argument's come up a lot, and it depends on the soil scientist. Soil scientists depend on where they're coming from.
Who's paying them?
Yeah, who's paying them? Now, some of the increase here, I started to wonder when we got this big increase in these at home, where's it come from? I asked the same question. Cycling is one. Now, this is granite soil. The granite particles are still in the soil. Now, when we get plants growing well and in a healthy manner, and the stuff I spoke about with the quorum sensing today, the minerals are available in those granite particles, and so microbes are still accessing. Yeah, that's where they came from in the first place. That's where all the minerals have come from.
I was about to say, after all.
Yeah. So, and it's an easy sell. What you said there, that's really all it's been. But we need to be, like I said, a bit careful with it, because if our places if the soils are totally degraded, it doesn't mean that the minerals aren't in there. That the soils are dead biologically, as in microbial, as microbially dead. So we need to kickstart them, get everything going, and then it'll come into place. So
Peter would say that we try to get them for you, because they're
that's
the
right.
deep tap rooted things, and they'll help you mulch them down, keep mulching them down, and you'll get the stuff from down there.
The multi-species crops that we keep talking about, all they are is weeds that we can make money out of.
Yeah.
Really, that's all they are. They're just a plant that we can graze, and so that's no different to what the weeds are doing that Pete talks about.
Yeah.
And I think too, someone come out and sell you a bucket full of fertiliser, if we understand how the plant's actually made, like 98% of it's made out of the atmosphere, only 2% of it comes out of the soil, or I'm not even sure it's quite that much. But we don't need hundreds of kilos of stuff thrown out when the plant's only 0.01% of whatever it might be of that element. But like 6% of it is nitrogen, comes out of the atmosphere. 44 or 45% is carbon, comes out of the atmosphere. 40% oxygen, comes out of the atmosphere. So 90% of that plant's being built from the atmosphere, not from what's in the dirt.
We've forgotten the water.
Well, and
We're
oxygen.
We're 95.
That part that comes out of the atmosphere, so that's your water. So that, when you understand that, you go, well, I don't really need so much of that, and that's why we can grow 6-7 ton barley crops on 2 kilos of fertiliser, no problems at all. So
Stop fertilising. We're told, oh, the world's going to fall off, you end up with no phosphorus in the soil, all this sort of stuff. It's just not true. And that in practice is not true.
There's another thing in this district, for those of you who do farm here.
And it's the same old story. Plants and microbes are the things that will release that phosphorus. That's really all that's happening.
you're starting out and you have a history of having to use that, you can't just go, I'm not going to do that, because you will end up with issues.
Yeah, please be careful when you're in the transition. If like I keep on saying, if your soils are stuffed, just transition off fertiliser slowly, and whatever else is there.
Dead right. In that transitioning for our farmers, we always tell them at most back off 20% initially, then push it as far as you want. Go 10, 10, 10, and keep going to where your balance is.
Where your comfort level is.
Yeah.
So it's not up to us to push them to 0%. We have to educate them as we move through the education process and let them make that decision how far they want to go and what they want to do. Power a long way, and you've got it on your doorstep, and
it's accessible,
and easy to use. You compost it properly.
Go for it.
Go for it.
Yeah.
But if you're carting it 200 kilometres, and like as I said before, 50-60 tonnes of compost makes a really good difference. Otherwise, it's just a.
No, we've got a lot of
and you compost it properly. I don't have a problem with it.
Compost is
It's good to use it.
Good fertiliser you can use, but it's not easy to make and big and bulky, and there's a really good reason. Over the years, people went to little bags of fertiliser because it's bloody easier. That's about all. But there's nothing wrong with any of those products, really.
It's a tool and toolbox that you've got available to you.
But you've got 4-legged biodigesters running around all the paddocks that you drive around. Like if you can utilise them, go for it. But yeah, if you've got that resource on your doorstep and it's cheap and accessible and done right, go for it.
Good question.
So for me, every farm's different. So you've got to sit down and go through that what, why, how process and work that out. So it just works out different.
If you're only using it every 5 years, then you probably are already transitioning to a degree. So you can push that further.
Yeah.
Yeah.